We believe in our four principles: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. And we believe that the more we speak about an ideas like against mass immigration, for example, the more support we will have. It's very different than, following the public opinion. We are leading the public opinion. We want to change the public opinion, and our goal is to move the overturn window. And for a discussion like on culture and immigration, that must not be a taboo subject. Same thing on abortion, for example.
Before we dive in, a quick whisper about today's sponsor, Ghost Founder. You know that moment when an idea jumps from someday to why not today? Ghost Founder lives in that moment. Ghost Founder takes the sketch from your napkin, gives it a heartbeat, and walks it out into the world. Fast. While everyone else is still writing pitch decks, the ghosts are wiring prototypes, lining up seed investors, and tuning your ops. Product market fit isn't just a hope, it's an outcome. If you're the kind of renegade who refuses to wait for permission, visit ghostfounder.com. Because around here, we scope things, build things, and fund things, in that order. Ghost Founder, the quiet engine behind loud breakthroughs. Today on the Covered Call, we're joined by Maxime Bernier. He is a lawyer, a businessman, and a former cabinet minister who spent more than a decade inside of Canada's political machine before deciding to walk away to build something of his own. He served as Minister of Industry and Foreign Affairs, ran a razor-thin race for the Conservative Party leadership, and later founded the People's Party of Canada on a simple promise: more freedom, more responsibility, and less government. From the entrepreneurial heartland of Beauce in Quebec to the halls of Parliament, Maxime's story is one of conviction over comfort, a man who left power to defend his principles. Maxime, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be with you guys. Thank you for having me. That's a nice opportunity to have a good conversation.
Yeah. Hey, Maxime, just a few months ago, we saw you in Vancouver, and it was the second time that I've seen you present something. But this time, when what you presented on was very close to my heart, because I've been following the gold market and global finances for many years now, since 2008. So you presented a thesis, right, on how the price of gold might help to reset and recapitalize the financial system. And we didn't plan for you to come on just when gold is making all-time highs, but here you are. So since the talk in Vancouver till now, do you still see things the same way? How are you seeing things with regards to the financial system and gold in particular?
Yes, that's a good question, Jason. And you're absolutely right. The monetary reset is happening right now in front of our eyes. And when I did that conference, Capitalism and Morality in Vancouver, about 2 months ago, gold was at 3,600, and now it's at around 4,000. Yes, something is happening because we are living for the first time in the history in a real fiat monetary system. After 1971, as you know, the US decided to close the gold window. And since that time, we have in the US and all across the world real fiat monetary currency. And that can do a time, but after more than 50 years, and that system is ending because what is happening right now in US, in Canada, in Western countries, you have huge debts and huge deficit, and they are printing money out of thin air. They are creating inflation, and more people understand that. And actually, like I said in my speech over there, I said also that the Americans weaponized the dollar with the sanctions that they put on Russia. And at the same time, with their huge debt and deficit, they're not serious about controlling their deficit. Actually, Trump did try with Doge and Mr. Musk, but nothing happened there. That was for me a big disaster, and the Congress is not ready to cut spending. So they are spending money, they are kicking the cans down the road, and we are paying for that with the inflation. And what is happening is, yes, gold is rising and now around 4,000. And I believe that we'll have a new monetary system, international monetary system with gold like we had in the 19th century. Gold will be a centerpiece of that. And I spoke about also the fact that the US can use their gold reserve and did a reevaluation because right now it's at $42 an ounce and the real price. But for them, it will be a good time to do that when gold will be for an ounce about 15,000 or 20,000. Like that, they will be able to create a lot of money out of thin air, and that will help them to erase a part of their deficit, and that will be the reset. And it will happen in US, it will happen everywhere. So you're right about asking the question about the monetary reset. It is happening, and what I must say right now, it is in the mainstream media. It was not in the mainstream media 2 months ago. Actually, as you know, a leader of the big firm, what's the name? I forgot the name. Morgan Stanley, sorry, said that now, usually when you invest, they are always saying, 60% in equities and 40% in bonds. And now Morgan Stanley said that we must have a new ratio, and the new ratio must be 60% equity, 20% only bonds, and 20% gold. So that's happening, and they are encouraging people to buy gold to preserve their purchasing power. So it's a very interesting time. It will be difficult for people who don't have any gold. They will leave and they will have that huge inflation. I said it, and for Canada also, our country is not ready because our central bank, as you may know, Jason, the central bank in Canada, the Bank of Canada, does not own any gold or silver. So it's when that reset will happen, it will be very difficult for us here in Canada. So yes, it is happening. It may take a couple of months or a couple of years, but every day there's a new news and a new a new facts, like also put all that together with the war in Ukraine, the Middle East, and so you have the geopolitical situation plus the deficit and the debts of Western countries. Everything is good for gold to go up for the next couple of years.
You're mute, Jason. But Maxim, that sounds like the perfect storm is really has already kicked off, right? And it sounds like we're in the middle of it, or maybe. Well, how far into this process do you think we are? Is it still the very beginning, or are we in the middle, or what?
No, I believe we are in the middle of that. It's not in the beginning anymore. When you have the mainstream media and Morgan Stanley that that are saying, you must have gold, and they change their ratio, like I said, we are in the middle of that. We'll have inflation. The inflation is supposed to be around 2%, but we all know that the government is lying to us. The real inflation must be about 6 to 8%. The way that the federal government is calculating inflation, they use a formula to be sure that the inflation that they will the result that we will have will be lower than the real inflation, because politicians don't like inflation. And so if they are telling us that the real inflation is 6%, that will be another cost for the government. And because, the pensions are indexed with the inflation rate. So if you use the formula that we used to use in the 1970s, the real inflation in Canada will be around 6%. So it's happening. We are feeling that here in Canada and in the Western countries. And, the best way, what we have to do as a country, First, we need to balance our budget in a year. We can do that. I said that during the last electoral campaign. I said we must balance the budget in 1 year, not like Poliev said in 4 years. I said in 1 year, we need to cut $45 billion. And after that, lower taxes to every Canadian. So that would be the real way, the only way to be sure that the Bank of Canada won't create inflation and money out of thin air. But Carney and Poliev, both of them agree on the fact that these deficits are okay, and they're not serious about, being fiscally responsible. We'll have a deficit of this year. We'll know that in the new budget in Canada, maybe this in the beginning of November, and we may have a deficit of $80 billion. So it would be very difficult for Canadians. And I'm telling the truth. I want to tell them that, everything will be good, the future would be good. But no, that would be a tough couple of years. It's too bad because we have these politicians that are not telling the truth and are not responsible.
Yeah, I mean, Maxime, I actually wanted to follow up to ask whether in the next 10 years, we're in a period of adjustment. Is it going to be exponential or is it just going to be linear and gradual? But I guess from your answers, it looks like things are unraveling at a ever quickening pace, right?
Yeah. I spoke about the economy, the monetary situation in Canada and globally with that monetary reset. We'll have a new financial system in a couple of years based on gold first, but also the other challenge that we Western countries, is immigrations and mass immigrations. It's destroying the social fabric of our country in Canada. I said that in 2019 when we created the People's Party. We need to have a maximum of 150,000 migrants per year. Nobody were listening to us at that time, and we had that mass immigration with more than 1 million migrants the last couple of years. And so now we need to stop that. And it's happening here in Canada, it's happening in US, it's happening in UK. And it's very difficult for Western countries. So they need to stop. We need to stop mass immigration. We need to start mass deportation. What I means by that is, we have all these people who are here on a temporary permit, like temporary foreign workers. But after that, they are not leaving our country. They are, staying here. So they're without any enforced permit. So they're illegals and we need to deport them. Same thing with the foreign students. In the past, when you have a visa to study here in Canada, coming from another country, you came, you studied, and you went back to your country of origin. Now, they're using that to stay in Canada, and the federal government is looking to give them their permanent residency. No, if after, when you have your diploma, you must go back to your country of origin. If not, we must deport you. So same thing for the asylum seekers. There's a lot of people who are coming here and they said their life is in danger in their country of origin. And, they're coming from the US and crossing the borders illegally here in Canada. So they have to go back to their country of origin. So that's the deportation. So first we must start to stop the mass immigration with no more migrants. And after a pause on immigration, starting the deportation. And some people are speaking about remigration. There's some countries in Europe, like Sweden, like UK, like Italy. They have programs and they're giving money and incentives to migrants to go back to their country of origin. That may be something that we can do in Canada, but let's do first ending the mass immigration and starting the deportation. And after that, we'll see if we need to have programs for migration. It's happening in Canada, the mass immigration, it's happening in Europe. So what I'm telling you is you have the economy that is not going well. We may be in recession in Canada right now. You have also the social fabrics of our country with mass immigration, and add to that the multiculturalism, because we are telling these migrants, come here in Canada, you are welcome, we open our borders, and at the same time don't integrate into our society. It's okay, keep your culture, keep your values, and live here in a ghetto. And we have ghettos in Brampton, Ontario, ghettos in Surrey, BC. So we need to stop that, and we need to abolish and repeal the Multiculturalism Act. So that's why, like you just said in your questions, it's a perfect storm. The economy, immigration, recession, everything is happening at the same time, and that will be difficult for Canadians and also Americans and Westerners.
So, Maxime, um, it's not really a pushback, but it's just a reframing of the immigration issue, right? And I've really enjoyed it when I read Hans Hermann Hoppe's book, and he's saying really, if you fix the entitlement problem, right? If you lower the entitlements that people receive simply for showing up, then you're basically fixing a lot of the migration immigration issue, because it's not, there's incentives driving this, right? It's not that people just decide one day, oh, I'm going to go somewhere else, pull out a map and say, hey, let's go to Canada for no reason whatsoever, or go to Germany, or go wherever. I think there is a whole you know subculture, I mean, that knows very well, okay, well, if you go here you can have these benefits, if you go there you have to work the system in this way. And I mean, it's quite commonplace in Europe, and I'm sure it's no different in Canada. What do you think about that?
You're absolutely right about that. People are coming here because Canada has a great reputation, but also we are very generous towards our migrants. And, that's a nice incentive for them to decide to come to Canada. Absolutely. There's some European countries who decided to cut all that. And so that was very effective because they had less migrants coming to their country. We must do that. The migrants from Ukraine, for example, they have all dental care, and it's free for them. There's a lot of programs. We were giving them, they were living in a hotel for months. Canadian taxpayers are paying for that. All that must stop. If you stop all that, for sure, that will help to stop the flows of migrants coming to our country. I agree 100% on that. It's happening. People are looking at the incentives, and they will choose the country that is the more generous. But actually, the migration and immigration that we had 25 years ago, or 35 or 40 years ago, they were coming to Canada. The federal government was not giving anything to them. They worked very hard, and they decided to be part of this society, and they integrated into our society. That's why when you do polling and focus group here in Canada, and you ask Canadians if they want to stop mass immigration, 65% they said yes, including immigrants. Immigrants who came here 40 years ago because it was difficult. They came here for the right reason, and now they are part of our country, and they can see that everybody can come. It's an open border. We need to stop that, absolutely, and by starting to end these incentives that we are giving to them.
Yeah, right. So I'm speaking from a background of, I'm from Germany, but I'm actively working on, and I've built a business in the U.S. My wife is American, and I'm actively working on my green card to immigrate, but for all the right reasons, right? We have family there. I have had business success there. I've always enjoyed the opportunities, but I'm also contributing a lot. Like, I pay more in taxes than most people make in a year. So, not to blow my own horn, but it just kind of happens when you build a business. All of a sudden, these things escalate. But when you say to cut off all immigration, then of course you could also run a risk of missing out on the good productive immigrants, right? But then, somebody like me, I mean, Jason is not originally from Germany, but he's on this call right now in Germany, right? So we all have Jason and I both have a very personal relationship with that topic, and I think we have a similar view that if you don't put any checks and balances on this issue, you end up spoiling it for everybody. And then even the people that come here, and I mean here maybe Germany, for example, because they seek asylum, because they seek to be safer than where they were at home. Well, if you do this for too long, then in fact they actually won't be safe anymore, because the whole place has kind of gone down a couple of notches, right? So it's tough for me to say it with such insistence as you do. I'm not quite confident enough, but I see the real impacts, like in my normal personal life, right?
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that you have family and people that you know in Germany, and I'm pretty sure
Of
they
course.
can tell you that what is happening right now, it's unsustainable over there.
Yes. Of course. Yeah.
And here in Canada, there's a program also, the temporary foreign workers program. Here, big businesses are using them for cheap labors, and the federal government said it's okay. But our proposal on that is to cut that program and only having a temporary foreign workers program for the agricultural sector. That's it. And now they're using that, and it's more difficult for young Canadians to find a job. If you go to Tim Horton or to Walmart, and you'll see all these migrants from India under that program. So that's cheap labor. If Walmart is not able to find a Canadian for a job, maybe they just have to increase the salary and they will be able to find people. So let's end that program. And that's a big difference with us and the Conservative Party here in Canada. They said that they will abolish the program, but in 5 years, after doing consultation with big businesses. So, no, we need to stop it right now, because I said we are in a recession in Canada. And so we need to work for our people, for young Canadians. And the best way to help them is to cut that program. And like that, it would be easier for them to have access to the first entry job.
Maxime, I've been wanting to ask you, especially somebody that's been behind the curtain in the realms of politics, right? So I've lived in the West, but I'm actually from Southeast Asia with ancestry from both China and the UK. So for me, when I first came to Europe, I was a bit surprised by this like overt attraction to multiculturalism. I'm not saying that it's bad or good, but why do you think that only in, it seems anyway, only in the Western countries, this this ideal of multiculturalism is so strong? Because historically speaking, it hasn't always ended very beautifully when societies try to do that. So since from an empirical standpoint, so many civilizations have kind of tended towards being more homogenous. Why is it, do you think, from your point of view, that the West looks at multiculturalism as this project to continue to pursue? Because maybe I'll just give it a little bit more context. Like, I come from Singapore, where it is multicultural in the sense that we have 4 main, ethnicities. And for us to all live together, there's a lot of sacrifices that need to be made. Like, everybody has to give up their mother tongue to go and speak English as a first language rather than speaking Chinese or Bahasa or Tamil, right? When we live in government housing projects, which are actually very pleasant and nice, I actually like the place I live in. There's actually certain quotas where the government makes sure that there's always a certain represented ethnicity in the building, so that you never get these, so quote unquote, like enclaves of just one ethnicity, right? Stuff like that. That when I say to a Western person, this is what we have to do in Singapore to ensure multiculturalism works, which it hasn't always worked, they are very stunned. Like, they take it to be offensive, the things that the Singaporean government does. So I'm trying to square the circle in a way, I guess, right? Why is it they want something that they're actually so uncomfortable with?
I believe that, the base of multiculturalism is every culture is equal. So, and that's the premise of that. But that's not true. Every culture is not equal. When you have people coming from a third world, you are importing that culture. And look in Canada, what's happening right now. There's a lot of people coming from India. Sorry about that, but that's the reality. They don't share our culture, they don't share our values. And so we are having that third world mentality that is coming to our country. So we must admit that every culture are not equal, but in Western countries, that's not what they believe. So that's why they are pushing multiculturalism. But it's a failure in UK, failure in Germany, failure here in Canada. And I can tell you why in Canada we decided to implement that. That was Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who decided to promote multiculturalism for one reason, because he wanted, as you know, in Quebec, we had and we still have a separatist movement. You have the Francophone living in Quebec, like me, and they want to keep their culture, they want to keep their values, their history, and in Canada, this country has been built on two nations, Francophone and Anglophone. But Trudeau wanted to be sure that the way to fight the independentist movement in Quebec was to open the door to more immigrants and promoting multiculturalism. And so that was a way for him to be sure that the sovereigntist movement won't grow so fast. And but that's a failure. And actually, when I started the discussion on immigration in 2019, when I said we must have uh, a lower level of immigrants with a maximum of 150,000 a year, that was the first time in Canada, English Canada, that you had a debate about the level of immigrations. But in Quebec, we are used to that at the provincial level. At every election, you have a party that's going to say a maximum of 50,000, the other party with a maximum of 30,000. We have that discussion because we want to keep our unity, we want to keep our culture, and we want to be sure that people who are coming to Quebec will be able to integrate into our society. But when we have too many people coming very fast at the same time, you and us as a society, we cannot integrate them. And so the multiculturalism started in Canada by Trudeau. And after that, Mulroney, a conservative, passed a legislation to be sure that, we will promote that. So what is happening right now, the federal government is giving grant and subsidies to celebrate another culture. Like, for example, the Chinese New Year. I don't have anything about celebrating the Chinese New Year, but if you want to do that, use your own money. The federal government must be there to promote our culture, our identity, our history, but not giving loans and not loans, subsidies to promote other culture. So the idea that multiculturalism is everywhere in Western countries, and that's why it's a cause of the problems that we have in our society in the Western world. It's because they think that all culture are equal, like I said in the beginning. And here in Canada, add to that a way to fight the independentist movement in Quebec when Trudeau father decided to implement that.
It's funny, right? Like, if we were talking now to Jeff Bezos or to somebody, I don't know, Elon Musk, and say, hey, what's the culture at Tesla? What's the culture at Amazon? Everyone would be so happy to talk about that, right? Like, oh, in my company, we need to be like this, like that. And that's how we all work together with 150,000 workers, friction free, right? We don't need to have meetings every day to tell us exactly what to do because it's our culture. We know how to do it. Then once you talk about culture on the national level, suddenly it's such a taboo topic. I find that pretty funny that we're not able to see that it's actually very similar.
You're right about that. And but now it's a little bit more mainstream here in Canada, in US also with Trump. Um, the overturn window is shifting. And we at the People's Party, when I'm saying that we are doing politics differently, it's not a slogan, it's the reality. We are not doing polling. We are not telling Canadians what they want to hear today, because we understand that Canadians and the populations has been manipulated by the mainstream media and the leftists. So we have a vision of this country. We believe in our four principles, like you said in the beginning: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. All our policies are in line with that. And we are promoting our policies. And we believe that the more we speak about an ideas like against mass immigration, for example, the more support we will have. So it's very different than following the public opinion. We are leading the public opinion. We want to change the public opinion, and our goal is to move the overturn window. And for a discussion like on culture and immigration, that must not be a taboo subject. Same thing on abortion, for example. We are starting that we did start that discussion in 2019. That was taboo to speak about limiting abortion, like in Sweden, in France, in UK. And that must be a crime to do an abortion the last trimester. It is not in Canada. You can have an abortion at any time. We don't have any legislation. We just want to bring that subject and have a debate about it. But it was taboo in 2019. It's still taboo today. So that's our way to do politics. We have a vision. We know what we think will be the best for this country, and we want to promote it. Contrary to traditional politicians who are looking at the polls and focus group and try to please everybody. And for us, we don't do any pandering. You like what we are saying, I hope you'll support us. If you don't like what we are saying, please don't vote for us.
Maxime, that's a perfect segue. So what was the moment for you when you decided to kind of leave the Conservative Party and go out and do this? Because you had a long career there, right? But there must have been something, or maybe a couple of things that happened that you were like, that's it, I got to do something different.
Yes, actually, I was a conservative. First, before jumping into politics in 2006, I worked 19 years in the financial sector. And after that, I decided to be in politics with Stephen Harper. And I decided to be in politics to fight for what I believe. At that time, I wanted a small government. I wanted to cut subsidies to businesses, lower taxes. And so I was industry minister. I was not able to cut subsidies to big business because, that was not part of our platform, and that was not a priority for the upper government. But I did a big reform in the deregulation of the telecom sector in Canada. That was a big success. So I was a minister. I tried to do my best to improve the quality of life for Canadians. And also, when Harper resigned in 2015, that was an open door for me to go and run to be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I did it. I didn't win with 49% of the vote. I decided to try and to work with Andrew Scheer, the elected leader at that time in 2017. And, answering your question, I had a position about a cartel here in Canada, supply management. It's a cartel in dairy, poultry, and eggs, as you know, and Canadians are paying twice the price for these products. It's a big subsidies that the consumers are giving to these producers, and that's a communist system. They are fixing the production and they are fixing the price. They, the cartel in eggs and poultry and dairy. And I wanted to abolish that. And I spoke about that. And my new leader, Andrew Scheer, said, Maxime, you cannot speak about that. It is not part of our platform. And if you're doing that, you won't be able to be a member of the Conservative Party anymore. And
Wow.
so what I said also at that time, we had that discussion about Trudeau was speaking about diversity. Diversity is our strength, and he was pushing that. And I said, no, it is not. We must promote the unity. Andrew Scheer didn't like that. And so I said, you don't want to tackle, the Conservative Party, you don't want to tackle the big issues. And I resigned in 2018, and I said, the Conservative Party of Canada is morally and intellectually corrupt because they're not pushing the real conservative ideas, because for them, the conservative ideas are not popular. And so they're speaking like liberals at that time and still today. But by doing that, they're giving more credibility to the leftist narrative. So I decided to leave the party and create a party based on strong conservative free market ideas. And we created the People's Party in 2018. We had our first election in 2019, and the COVID election in 2021, and the last election a couple of months ago. So it's like I said to our candidates, what we are doing, it's for the mid and long term. We are on the right side of the argument. We need to be out there and to speak to Canadians. And it's a little bit more difficult because the mainstream media is canceling us. They don't want to speak about our ideas because they know that, if they're giving us a platform, a huge platform, we would grow faster, and they don't want that. But step by step, we are there. And that's why I'm with you today. It's a nice opportunity to speak about the People's Party and and the way that we want to change our country here in Canada for the better, with more freedom and less government.
Yeah, it brings a smile to my face to hear a politician say that they want to have less government and more freedom. It's like some breath in the room.
And we
finally.
are serious. We are serious about that. I was elected 13 years. I know what to do to be elected. I know it. I just have to tell what people want to hear today. But I'm not doing that. I'm promoting our ideas. They were saying that I'm a racist in 2019 because I wanted fewer migrants in this country. They cannot say that in 2025 because we were right at that time. And now, we have 65% of the population who are saying enough is enough with immigration. So that's what we are doing, pushing strong free markets, libertarian ideas for a smaller government. And I believe that our time will come. But I can tell you the People's Party will be there when Canadians are ready.
Maxime, I think there's a kind of a civilizational struggle always between freedom on one side and security on the other side, right? And the free person typically is looking for opportunity. The security seeking, the maybe more dependent person wants safety and guarantees, right? Where do you think Canada is? Like, has it tiptoed too far towards the guarantees? And what's the cost for, what's the cost of freedom? Like, is it too expensive maybe to let people be free?
But what we have in Canada, yes, at the provincial level and the federal level, we have a big government that is giving a lot of guarantees and programs to Canadians. So when you look at the statistics, there's about 40% of Canadians in our country who are working for a government, the municipal government, the provincial government, or the federal government. So when you have a lot of people like that who are in the public sector, and you have a big government that is giving money and nice programs and daycare and all that, the population is used to that, and it's not popular to speak about cutting these programs. But we must do that because the best thing is to replace these programs with more of their own money in their own pockets. So they will be richer, will create more economic growth by doing that. That's the solution. But right now, that's why you have the conservatives who are supposed to be with Polyev here in Canada, real conservative and trying to be fiscally responsible. They're not speaking about cutting all these programs, daycare, dental care, and all these programs at the federal level that are unconstitutional because it's under a provincial jurisdictions, and actually the federal government doesn't have the money to pay for these programs. We are borrowing money. So we need to tell them the truth. But people are used to have all these handouts, all that money coming from the government. And if you're a politician and you're telling them, I will cut that, it would be a big challenge to be elected. But I believe that Canadians are intelligent. I don't want to play with their emotions, but I'm speaking to their intelligence. And if they look at it, and if we are able to do all these cuts and having a smaller government, they will be able to have more of their own money in their own pockets, and they will be able to spend for what they want. Now they don't have the money, and they're asking the government to give them the money. That's the wrong solution.
Yeah. Maxime, what you've been describing about Canada, I think to different shades, it's pretty much what's happening around a lot of the Western world, right? You said you were early with your 6 to 7 years later, people are seeing things. You're getting a majority of people agreeing with what you said before. How do you think everybody's eyes are going to be open quicker this time with how things are going? Like we said earlier, how things are unraveling pretty fast. Because we spoke about the problems internally, right? But from a global perspective, there's also another issue for the West where they're losing competitiveness to people like in East Asia, Japan, China, Korea, India. Like these countries as industrialized nations did not really exist in the 70s, 80s like they do today. So as the West is trying to solve their problems internally, they still have to contend with these big nations outside, stealing or competing away their share of the pie, right?
Yeah, it's a big challenge, actually. So what we are doing here in Canada, we are giving, a lot of subsidies to big business and try to promote some industrial sector and try to pick the winner. And so I don't want to do that. I really believe in a real free markets. But that being said, for the big business or small business to be productive, because that's the challenge of our society here in Canada and maybe in US also, businesses are not so productive. So you need to, first of all, to cut taxes on business, cut subsidies, cut the regulations. And so that will help them to be more competitive. But that's a big challenge. There's a lot of regulations to start a business. That was not the case 40 years ago. And now, you look to China and other countries, it's easier to start a business. They don't have all that regulations. So, yes, we need to have a strong deregulation. We need to be able to give more freedom to businesses and entrepreneurs to be able to be more competitive. But the changes, I think it will happen here in our country. I'm looking at in UK right now with Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage with the Reform Party, had 13% of the vote at the last election, and he was able to elect 6 members of parliament. But now he is in advance in the poll, and if there's an election today in UK, he will be the prime minister. He will win the election. So people are fed up, and they're ready to vote for the reform, vote for the big reform, and that revolution in UK. And that will happen here in Canada. And I believe that we need a revolution like that. We need a cultural and economic revolution in our country to go back to the great society that we were a couple of years ago, more productive. And now you have that big disparity without the very rich and the poor. We need to change all that. We need to have that reform, and that the People's Party is speaking about that with our policies. And I hope that, in 4 years, we may be in election in Canada in 4 years. I hope that more people will be ready and vote for their values and vote for that common sense revolution. But that's why I said, it will be tough, very tough time in Western countries the next 2 to 4 years, because of all that, the lack of productivity, the competition coming from China, from other countries, the deficit, the debt, the immigration, the cultural war, all that at the same time. So we'll have to pass through that, and I believe that we'll have a better future. But we time will be more difficult before being better.
So Maxime, just in closing, because I know we're almost hitting time, but you were saying it's easier to start a business in Southeast Asia, for example, right? So Jason and I just went 3 months ago to China, and somebody was just pulled up. Was like, "Oh, you want to start selling your goods on the street? You know what you do? You pull up your WeChat, which is like WhatsApp, right? Basically, you push some buttons. 10 seconds later, you can start accepting payments. The tax return is done automatically for you based on the government comes and suggests, hey, is this does this sound right? Is this what you did in turnover? And if you say yes, that's it. That's all the paperwork required to set up a business, to start selling, and to do your taxes, right? Jason just bought a motorcycle. This is breaking news on the show. And he's tried all day to register it, and it's not possible in Germany, right? He can't get an appointment. There's no private service that can get you an appointment. You have to have some digital ID to do it online. But if you forgot the PIN or whatever, or they never sent it to you, then you're stuck, right? So like it's so incredibly dysfunctional in the West. I really feel like, and this is also, I mean, the US is also part of the West, but for me, relatively speaking, between Europe and the US, it's still so much less friction in the US. Like when I try to do business in Germany, I literally feel like I have both hands tied behind my back. I just can't do it. And so I think naturally people will look for more freedom, to just be able to capitalize on opportunity, right? It's like the purpose of life, at least for me. And so naturally I'm going to go where I can do that.
And you're absolutely right about that. We have a lot of regulations in Canada, and it's killing businesses. So it's a good example about starting a business in China. In a communist country, can you believe it's easier in a communist country to start a business than in Canada, supposed to be a capitalist country? Yeah. Let's do all these reform. And maybe I can say to your viewers, if you want to know more, you can go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca. You can follow me and Maxime Bernier on X, on YouTube, Rumble, and Instagram, and also TikTok. So on all these social media. And our goal is to promote our ideas and building a better future for Canadians in line with what we did 100 years ago to build this country. And we need to go back there, to go back to the roots. And that's what we want to do. And I want to thank you, Jason and Lovis, for having me in your show and giving me that opportunity to speak to you and through you to your viewers.
Maxime, the pleasure is ours. So thank you so much for giving us the chance. And I think I can speak for Lovis to say that we'll be cheering on for freedom for you guys from the sidelines and be watching closely.
I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.
Thanks, Maxime.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
And that wraps up our main conversation. But we're not done yet. We're going into overtime, where Jason and I unpack some insights, reflect on what just happened, and connect a few dots. And go. I think he's the most successful politician I've met and talked to. Pretty sure. Like somebody was actually like first rank leadership of a country,
of a super developed, highest standard of living country, or at least in the past it was, right?
Yeah. So the thing that I wanted to get into with him actually, but then I thought, you know what? I think it'd be even more fun if you and I talk about it. So we look into resources and resource investing a lot, right? Canada is freaking stacked in that sense, right?
Yeah.
It's a it's massive country. They are very rich in resources, pretty much. Like, I mean, there's very few things. I can't really think of anything that they don't have at least some of. And there's only like 40 some million Canadians. There's really no reason that all these people aren't freaking rich, right?
Yeah. I mean, they should be Dubai level, right? They should be Emirati,
Yeah.
Norwegian level. Yeah.
But what do you like? How come that doesn't happen? What do you think?
Well, I'm not an expert on the topic, right? But the little bits that I've scratched, it seems like they are actually very much tied to the hip to the US. So with that, a lot of the resources they have can turn out to be so quote unquote stranded, right? And only instead of reaching the world market, because they don't have the right pipelines, they don't have the right ports, etc. Some of their resources can be sold at less than market prices, just like how um, the Henry Hub natural gas price is often much lower than the European natural gas prices just because of geography, right? But I don't think that's the main reason. I think it's the same like in Australia, right? Don't get me wrong, these countries are beautiful places to live in, but how is it possible that a natural gas superpower like Australia, you're still having energy problems? Australia's got,
Mhm.
the world's biggest reserves of uranium. I think only behind Qatar for natural gas. Got more coal than you can burn in 1,000 years, and yet electricity prices in Australia are one of the highest, making their industry, um, you know, one of the reasons anyway to making their industry not so competitive. So I think people find a way to make money the easy way rather than competing, and they just find a way with lobbies to just try and build those moats and monopolies, right? And then you get rich, but overall the pie gets smaller. But I
Yeah.
stand to be corrected. I'm speaking as a massive tourist. This is not my wheelhouse, right? Just yeah. But you did ask the
I
question, so
mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of it, I think, is too that of course, like the resources that we're talking about have fallen out of favor, or there's a lot of there's just a lot of misguided opinion, I think, and these programs like saving, I don't know, fighting climate change or whatever becomes kind of the justification for all sorts of mayhem rather than actually com- improving, making steps towards improving, climate change or whatever. Instead, they come out with all sorts of ridiculous rules that just really kill people's livelihoods and end up killing them in the short term rather than in the long term, and then somehow that's better. So, yeah, but I guess never really understood that. But I think Canada's definitely gone pretty far with that. Also, I mean, there's all the makings of a flourishing oil and gas industry, coal, lumber, like all the
and
things.
and
But
even in
yeah,
manufacturing and other industries, right? Not just primary. They
yeah,
have. I know their nuclear reactor designs called CANDU, CANDU, are quite renowned globally to be, a very, very good, effective, efficient design. But it kind of got chopped at the legs, right? At the knees, back in the day because of, certain ideologies. So that didn't get the chance to be pushed.
right.
Um, I think their aeronautical industry is also pretty strong. So they have a history of being a very sophisticated economy,
Hmm.
But yeah.
I don't know. And then the thing that's, I mean, Canada is kind of known as like I don't know, maybe it's like America's more polite, progressive cousin or something.
Mhm.
Um, but then, of course, a lot of people over the last few decades that wanted to get out of their own situation in a country that's maybe, less fortunate, I think that Canada has quite a long history of making it quite easy for people to come over and to, I don't know what the mechanics are, but like you come, you end up staying, there's some sort of forgiveness, some sort of program, and before you know it, you end up with a Canadian passport, right? So it's not only the ease of obtaining a visa, it's then from there also quite easy to become a full citizen. I mean, we know some prominent examples, don't have to call it out right now, right? But they and I mean they even make movies about this, right? That but and then once you have the Canadian passport compared to maybe like a, I don't know, Pakistani or Indian passport, the world is so much more open to you. Now you can travel freely to most countries, most developed nations, right? And so of course like the prize for getting it is massive. Um and so I mean, if a country chooses to do that, I completely get it, like out of compassion that, I, of course, I also want to help my fellow man. And so, like, I have a huge heart for, like, oh, if people have to flee from war, of course we should grant them asylum. But there's still a difference between getting them out of harm's way. That's one. Then getting them out of harm's way, but also paying their whole way and hooking them up to the full entitlement system as if they were a citizen and had been paying into the system for decades. That's very different. And then on top of that, it's also different to do all these things, but then also hand them a passport at the end, right? So like there's like so much more nuance between these approaches. And I think the countries that, like we talk about Singapore a lot, I think it's not that hard to go to Singapore and live there and maybe work there. But good luck getting a passport, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, even China is opening up now, right? So it sounds like it's getting a lot easier to get a visa so that you can spend a lot of time there and find a job and work there. But I think hell will freeze over before they start handing out Chinese passports to people.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important distinction, right? So, from my natural disposition is I'm for open borders, right? I think that no human is born with a passport or with a nationality. I think these are all fictions. They're all legal fictions that we made up over the course of time. And back in the day, it was just like, well, who are your people? Where's your family, right? Who were, because that defines who you are way more than a geographic region. And if your people, your tribe, your family, whatever, decides to move somewhere else, well, then that's where we are now. But of course, they're going to be met with great rejection. There's peril. It's dangerous to do it. Who knows if it'll work out? They find a new homestead, etc. But um, so in a way, I reject that whole state idea. Like, oh, I'm going to be a citizen of somebody. Like, why? F that. I'm just me. I'm just a guy, and I hopefully have some skills, right? And if you like what I have for sale, then you're welcome to buy it. Kind of
Yeah.
a thing. Um, but then at the same time, then Hoppe's stuff echoes in my ear a lot. He's like, yeah, of course, like libertarian, like open borders, but on the premise that property owners have the full, like unencumbered right to also discriminate as much as they want against anybody and everybody for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
So
their private
that,
property, right?
yeah. So if this is my land and I don't like your face, then you're not allowed on it. And it doesn't matter. Your creed doesn't matter. Your color doesn't matter. Your whatever. It does not matter. If it's my land and I don't want you on it, I don't want you on it. And this is, of course, then where that causes all kinds of issues in the eyes of statist, right? Who's like, well, but we make the rules, not you. And it's like, well, but it's mine. It's my property. So it's like, and then people end up trading their rights, their property rights for all these weak sauce half measures. And then, of course, before you know it, you have a bunch of problems, a bunch of trouble. Sorry,
Yeah.
rant finished.
I mean, yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's, I don't know. I was trying to bring the conversation towards like why is this so emotionally charged, right? Like why is it
Right.
so hard for him to say culture is something that we have to protect? Or why is it so hard for him to say, hey, I think we should put a quota on how many people we can bring in a year? Like, why is that so hard to say? I mean, with every system, you have a carrying capacity, right?
Yeah.
It's just a 5-year-old will know that, right? How many people can you put in a car? How many people can you put in a boat before it gets unstable, right? So if you've got 100 people in a boat and it's got, a carrying capacity of 80 and you've already got 100, and then now there's 500 people in the water, what's the argument here? Like, we're supposed to say, hey, let's all drown because then it's fair,
Right.
But okay, maybe we should all drown, but then we should have that conversation. But the fact that we cannot have that conversation is what I find appalling, really, right? Like, to just bring that up, to say, hey, how many people can our society carry? Don't just forget about all the multiculturalism or whatever, right? Just purely, hey, with our economics right now, our fiscal situation, the number of schools and hospitals we have, houses we have, how many people can we bring in? And why can't you have that conversation? How is that a racist conversation? It's not
Right.
racist because we could be bringing in people of exactly the same race. We talked about this once, right, with China, that you can't move around China so freely. So why is that? Why can't you just bring your family from, I don't know, Anhui province and move to Beijing? You can't, because everybody wants to do that. And if everybody did that, the whole place would be in chaos. So you can't do it. But does that mean they're racist? Because they're all the same race. They all speak the same language. So I
Well, and
think
then and I mean, they make rules, right? So then you have, if you have to buy property, for example, and then you become a local taxpayer, and then you can bring your kid to go to school there and stuff. And
exactly.
of course, it creates tension, right? But you got to, I mean, I guess they're of the opinion you got to do something to make it work. So,
I think our job, right, is to actually meet these tough conversations head on and just say, hey, try to take the emotion out of it. Because it's actually an adult conversation. You don't have to
mm,
throw labels on it, you don't have to call people names. It's purely, there is a real life logistical problem to be solved. How can we solve it with the resources we have, right?
yeah,
And what's the best way? And let's try. And maybe if it doesn't work, we'll iterate and try something else. But the fact that you want to talk about the problem and then that makes you a racist. So it's going to be interesting when if we have people from Asia listening into Maxime's uh, episode, right? Like, for them, it will be an eye opener, I think, to see the kind of political problems Westerners are going through
mm.
versus what's on everybody's radar on a day-to-day basis in East Asia.
Yeah. I mean, but so a big part of this is, I worked for this big German e-commerce company for 2 years, and the whole time I felt like all everybody did was stand around and look at their own belly button. It was like trying to solve all these internal struggles, but way not enough time spent talking to customers, figuring out what do they need? How do we serve them better? Right. So with all this going on in the West, so much internal friction, like Asia is going to whoop the West's butt because they're just like, hey, if you guys are busy, you know, spending your cycles on all this crap, and we're just going to work and we're just doing what we can every day, like you just don't stand a chance. It's just too much, it's just too much wasted energy. So like I commend Maxim for his efforts also to to try to present an alternative for voters in Canada. But on some level, I'm also of the opinion that that system, and with that, I don't mean Canada specifically, but like this Western democratic system we got going on, I will be shocked if it will actually be properly reformed from the inside from one of the parties that are still in some way or originated of the same system, right? I think the mechanism, I think, will actually be different. But you can't blame a man for trying, right? And standing up for his principles and doing the best thing he knows how to do. So I respect that, of course, right?
I mean, dude, to be in that high up in the Conservative Party and then to step away to
Yeah,
start something based on principle is very commendable, right?
absolutely. Yeah, and hopefully inspiring for others, right? Not even to vote for him, but like to do the same, like stand up for your principles. And if you see something's not working, then work in your own small way to do something about it. I think that's what it comes down to, right? Like I'm not one to want to lean on really anybody to help solve my problems. But I, of course, but of course, everybody needs help to solve their problems. But I think it's more of a community effort, more bottoms up, not from top down, right? I don't want to call big daddy government to fix my issue. I just want to have the means and the time to actually fix something that's wrong right here where I'm at, not somewhere else, not in Berlin or in Washington D.C. or in Quebec or wherever, but like right there.
That's why I called you today to cry about not being able to register my motorbike. I knew there was no point trying to call up, so I just called sideways. Yeah, so for those people listening, it's crazy, right? Like you can't go to the office unless you have an appointment. But to make an appointment, you need to call in. But when you call in, they only have specific times of the day that they pick up the phone, and then maybe they don't pick up the phone. So if they don't pick up the phone and you can't go visit them in person, what you gonna do?
Yeah. Large swaths of the German bureaucracy are still working the exact same schedule and approach that they started during COVID, which means they heavily minimized exposure to their citizens that they're
Yeah,
actually serving,
yeah,
and they mostly kept it like this, right?
yeah.
Really,
That,
no joke.
yeah, that's what I heard people saying as well. Like,
And so before COVID, you were okay to just show up and you could first come, first serve. You just come at 8 o'clock when they open and you probably be done by 9:30, but they don't even let you do that anymore because they realized during COVID that people will happily wait in line online or something. Like, I don't know. Yeah,
so
it's
because
crazy,
I
man.
couldn't do it online, right? They said, oh, then you can book an appointment to do the registration in person. But what you need to do is you need to wait every Friday at 11 a.m. The appointment openings are released to the public, and then everyone's supposed to be like sitting on their computer at 11 a.m. on a Friday and be the first one to click with the fastest internet so that you can get your appointment.
And this seriously is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like,
Like, dude, me telling you this makes me feel like nausea.
the whole point of having an online booking system is that you do not need to do that, right? You can just,
Exactly.
like,
Why
it
not
doesn't
just
make
leave it
any
open,
sense.
and whenever there's an open appointment slot, just put it on there. I'm sure. No, look, I'm a guest in the country. I don't want to complain too much. I just have to learn to be more German.
Well, I knew a lady that in Leipzig was working for a company that got a big contract helping to digitalize some of these like citizen services for some local government entity. And they went to town, like, designing apps and interfaces and doing all kinds of really cool focus groups and figuring out exactly what the users want and how to guide them through it. And then they were like, okay, cool, let's launch it. And then the government was like, oh, sorry, the current rules in place, like the legislation actually does not allow this currently. So first we have to change the law and then we can launch this app. And it's like, and then that makes me like double mad, right? Because it's like, okay, wait, so our laws are stupid and blocking just reducing friction. And also, you already freaking paid for the app. Why? Like, it's a
You're
double
supposed
waste.
to
So you've already
figure
paid.
that out first.
Yeah, exactly. You've wasted my money on building the thing that now nobody can use. And now we have to change the law, which is always a maybe, right?
And when the law does get changed, guess what? That app will be obsolete. You need to do a new one.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right.
hopefully more freedom in the West and smaller governments. Let's see.
Definitely for that.
I don't even know if I'm allowed
Alright.
to say that, but
I
I
think
hope
so.
I don't get into trouble.
You're allowed to say that on this show.
Yeah. All right, man. I'm gonna go get some shut-eye. I'll talk to you
Yeah.
again very soon.
Sounds good, man.